Thinking Out Loud with Dave Palmer. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey. And yes, I mentioned it before, the decisions that we're going to make today probably influenced by these individuals we're going to be talking about next with Dave Palmer. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Keith. Good to be with you again on this Tuesday morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, aside from me fumbling over my voice, but hey, it happens, It's inner peace, right? I got that inner peace going on, so that's helping.
That's right. That's one of the things I love about you as a host is that you always seem so even-keeled and you keep that joy consistent all the time. So good for you on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so you gave a great introduction to this about the decisions that we're going to be making on an hour-to-hour basis and all that. And I also always am amazed at how the whole thing kind of ties together. And I jump in the car this morning, I'm driving over here, and I hear about, I think it was Pius V that you were talking about, the saint. And then you mentioned the Council of Trent in the 16th century, and then you happen to mention how he wanted to implement the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas. And I thought, wow, okay, that kind of ties in. And one thing you may or may not know, Keith, is that at the Council of Trent, the church fathers who gathered there had, in order for them to answer the Protestant Reformation, which was, raging throughout the world, is that they had, of course, sacred scripture primarily. They had a lot of writings of the Holy Fathers in the past. They also had up there on the podium with them the Summa Theologia of St. Thomas Aquinas. That was one of the primary sources that they used in the Council of Trent in order to answer the Protestant reformers. The other thing that I think, and then centuries later, I talk a lot about on Back to the Father about Aeterni Patris. And this was an encyclical that was written by Pope Leo XIII in 1879, where he said, hey, the world's gone pretty crazy. We got a lot of bad philosophy out there. And we, like Pius V said, need to return to St. Thomas Aquinas' philosophy. And then, of course, Debbie and Adam, how many times did Debbie and Adam talk about objective truth in their segment today? So I'm going to talk about objective truth. And the philosophy that I want to kind of highlight today, Keith, is called utilitarianism, okay? The two main proponents of utilitarianism were they're both British, Jeremy Bentham, who died in 1832, and John Stuart Mill, who was actually, John Stuart Mill's father, James Mill, was like best friends with Jeremy Bentham. So John Stuart Mill almost like had Jeremy Bentham as an uncle, and it was literally his godfather. And so these guys clearly influenced each other very much, right? And so notice, these are 19th century philosophers. Leo XIII writes at the end of the 19th century, and he's like, whoa, we got Marxism, we got utilitarianism, and we need to get back to a solid philosophy. And he says, hey, let's go back to Thomism, All right, so all that is to say that utilitarianism, probably the biggest two problems with it is, first of all, it sounds great. It's really appealing. And secondly, it's half right, which also means it's half wrong, right? So here is the principle of utilitarianism as described by Jeremy Bentham. It's called the greatest happiness principle. All right. Individual happiness consists in achieving the greatest pleasure and the avoidance of the most pain for the greatest number of people. Okay, so you're like, wow, that sounds great. I mean, why would we not want the greatest number of people to be happy and the greatest number of people to not feel pain, right? Okay, so that's Bentham. That's classic utilitarianism. And Bentham went so far as to create what he called a philosophic calculator, where he said when you make a decision, you put the pleasure in one column, the pain, the pleasure that it's going to cause in one column, the pain in the other column, and then kind of literally give them numbers and then add up and see if there's more pleasure that's going to come out of the action or is there going to be more pain that comes out of the action. And if there's more pleasure, then it's probably a good action, okay, especially when it relates not only to you, but, he's like, also to the common good as well. So far you're thinking, oh, yeah, that doesn't sound so bad, right? Now, here's the problem. This is a direct quote from Bentham. He says, nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. All right, so that in and of itself is very problematic, and that means our pain and our pleasure control us. Okay, so every decision we make is based on our pleasure and the pleasure of the most people. Whereas, to mystic philosophy say, well, no, we're ruled by reason, and our reason is reflective and participates in the reason of God, right? And our passions should be under the control of our reason and our will, right? Not the other way around. And so let's and then John Stuart Mill, like I said, he was basically like the nephew of Jeremy Bentham, and he comes along and he very much includes it into the whole idea of politics, and he was very much on personal rights. Okay, so and he said if we basically, he's like a libertarian today, like an extreme libertarian, is saying you do basically whatever you want to do as long as other people aren't harmed. All right, as long as there's not great harm to other people, you basically do whatever you want, okay? So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of utilitarianism, and you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound so bad. A lot of people happy, less pain and all that. Right. But here's the problem, and one of sometimes there's extreme examples that are used to kind of highlight the faults of utilitarianism. The main thing is, utilitarianism has no recognition of absolute truth, objective truth, right? It's consequentialist. It's like, what are the consequences going to be? Not so much am I doing the right thing, not so much that there's a universal truth, there's an objective truth that I have to kind of conform myself to that comes from God. It's more like, what are the consequences of my action going to be? And so you often hear this question that's just hypothetical, like, should Adolf Hitler's mother, if she had an opportunity, if she had aborted him, okay, would that have been better for the world, right? And people's gut first reaction would be, yeah, wow, then we wouldn't have had the Holocaust, right? We wouldn't have 6 million Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. But that violates the principle of the ends don't justify the means, right? And so you can't do something evil in order that consequences would be good because of it, right? And on a much more, kind of like day-to-day basis, imagine, grandma has been diagnosed with dementia, and the prognosis is that she's probably going to not have a great quality of life for the next, 10 years, and then she may pass away, and she may not recognize us, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of time and effort, and she's probably not going to be very happy as well. And so the utilitarian principle would be, well, maybe euthanasia would be the best solution here, because she's not very happy, and we all have to take care of her. It's going to cost a whole lot of money, and that's going to drain the bank account. And so the greatest pleasure and the less pain would be to do, the simple thing and, and put grandma down, right? So that's a very real life scenario that a lot of people have to face, and the utilitarians would likely say, it's probably better if we euthanize her, right? Because the greatest good is going to happen, okay? One other quick example that's very, very, applicable to everybody's life would be something like abortion, a woman is about to get a degree, and she's very, very intelligent, and this degree is going to help her become a doctor. She's going to write a paper. She might find the cure for cancer, and so she's got these great dreams, which are awesome, and how much that's going to help humanity. And by golly, she gets pregnant. And boy, this baby would sure, throw a monkey in that whole situation. And so maybe for the common good, the greatest good would be that she aborts this child. Okay, the child gets his life lost, but think of what the great for humanity, if she doesn't have the burden of this child while she's trying to get this degree, right? Or she's training for the Olympics, and wow, what pride her country would have if she wins a gold, medal in the Olympics, but by golly, she got pregnant. So again, these are two real life situations where I think utilitarianism, because it doesn't have the foundation of objective truth and right and wrong, it only looks at consequences, would cause problems, let's just say. All right, so that's a thumbnail sketch of utilitarianism. What do you think, Keith? Are you a utilitarianist or no?
No, I mean, that's the more that I was thinking about it, like it's a very almost a selfish way to go about the world, because it's like, how do I feel? How it's all about me, and thinking like, oh, it's for the greater good. I'm probably going to be more in line of thinking about myself before I think about others if I'm using this form of ethics, right? So it's very interesting, and I don't see it being a good way to have inner peace either, if we're always thinking about ourselves.
Yeah, now the utilitarians would say, oh, come on, you're wrong. Look, the very basis of it is the greatest good for the greatest number. Come on. But, I read a lot of Dr. Peter Kraft, and he talks about how this definitely leads to egotism. And also, I'll just throw in there as a parting shot here, I've heard Sissel talk about this John Paul II book called Love and Responsibility. And my wife and I are actually going through this book right now, and it's phenomenal. And John Paul II starts off talking about utilitarianism. The utilitarian attitude inside of a marriage, where you're basically using another person, and you're kind of justifying it because it seems like you're doing the great thing, but you're not. You're using them. So, anyways. Bottom line, don't be a utilitarianist, Keith. Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dave Palmer, for joining us every single Tuesday on Thinking Out Loud. Always learn something new. And speaking of learning something, when you mentioned Pope Leo XIII and his encyclical, it immediately, I was like, oh, I remember that because I remember hearing it on Back to the Father. So it's just perfect.
Yeah, 1 o'clock on Fridays on all the social media channels for GRN, Back to the Father. Yeah, thanks, Keith.
Yeah, of course. And remember to subscribe to, especially YouTube, because you're able to converse with Dave and Sissel, especially, going back and forth. It really is a fun time with Back to the Father, learning something new and interacting with everybody. So make sure to follow GRN Online on our YouTube, but also another short blib to follow us on, or at least follow the page, I should say, on Facebook, Guadalupe Radio Network, and also GRN Online on Instagram for incredible content that maybe we strip down a little bit for you. So that way you have little snippets of things that you can go to help inspire you and your day throughout this week. But hey, that is the end of our first hour. So those who are parting ways, maybe they're heading finally to work, getting out of the car, or maybe you're going to be listening to Mass. Maybe you're listening to Aquinas Radio, Aquinas Communications, and this is the end of the show. But hey, there is still a second hour. So if you want to listen to this and watch it, hey, GRN Online YouTube. But for those still here, hey, we got a whole another hour coming up with you. I'm going to be talking with Vincenzo Randazzo about the ethics of AI and so much more. So you want to stay with that. But like I said, another hour of our show coming up soon. So if you are parting ways, God bless and make it a joyful day. And we'll see you after this break.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.